From impeachments to inaugurations, if it's a political story, we are on the scene. The race for the White House is heating up.
Kamala, you're fired!
I say, bring it on.
If it's breaking news, we're live with the latest coverage. From the White House, the State Department, and Capitol Hill, we know the issues, but above all, we know the players to bring you the latest in-depth analysis on all the key stories that we're covering. I'm Eric Ham. Join me from Washington here on Firstpost America. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Eric Ham, live in Washington, D.C. And over the next few minutes, we'll take you from the United States and around the world, covering all the top stories of the day. But before that, here's a look at the latest headlines. The Kremlin confirms claims that former President Donald Trump did in fact send COVID-19 testing kits to Vladimir Putin during the height of the pandemic. However, Moscow denies the two leaders spoke on the phone, as written in Bob Woodward's new book titled War. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky meets British Prime Minister Keir Starmer in London. President Zelensky also meets NATO's new Secretary General Mark Rutte to secure more weapons for his country. India hosts navies of Australia, Japan, and the United States in a major military exercise of the Quad Nations. The drills in the Indian Ocean include anti-submarine warfare and subsurface live fire exercises. Chinese telecom giant Huawei to open a cloud data center in Nigeria by the end of October. This will be Huawei's third cloud center in Africa, as a Chinese firm pledges to support 100 Nigerian businesses with the infrastructure push. And Guyana's oil exports increased by 58% in the last year. Tensions in the Middle East between Israel and Iran is pushing countries to purchase oil from nations outside the OPEC bloc, particularly in South America. We begin in the Middle East. President Joe Biden held a 30-minute phone call with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Wednesday. Speaking to each other for the first time in 49 days, the two leaders agreed to stay in contact over the next few weeks. Assuring support to Israel and its right to self-defense, President Biden vowed to stay committed to working with Netanyahu. Also joining the call was Vice President Kamala Harris, who's been actively taking part in the Biden administration's interactions with Israel. The White House called the conversation between the leaders direct and productive.
Give you a couple of just top lines on the call. It lasted about 30 minutes. It was 30 minutes long. It was direct. It was productive. Obviously, the call that the president had with the Prime Minister of Israel.
Now, Biden and Netanyahu did speak about Israel's potential response to Iran's missile attack from October 1st. President Biden said he supports an Israeli retaliation. However, the commander-in-chief warned Netanyahu against striking Iranian nuclear facilities after the Israeli leader put forward a proposed plan of attack.
So as you all know, the U.S. and the Israeli government have had discussion since last week, certainly since after the Iran attack. And so those discussions continued with the president and the prime minister, but I can say that they did have a discussion about that. And it is a continued discussion. It started off with obviously staff level discussion last week, and obviously the two leaders had an opportunity to talk directly. Like I said, it was productive, it was direct, it lasted about 30 minutes. And this is on top of more than a dozen calls that the president and the prime minister have had since October 7th of last year.
Meanwhile, Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant has postponed his trip to Washington at the request of Prime Minister Netanyahu. Gallant says the Prime Minister needs him in the country as Israel prepares to surprise Iran.
Now you've seen the attacks that the Iranians attacked us a short while ago. These attacks were aggressive, but they failed because they weren't accurate attacks, just as we have been doing until now in the war on all other fronts. Whoever attacks us will be hurt and will pay a price. Our attack will be deadly, precise, and above all surprising. They will not understand what happened and how it happened. They will see the results.
As tensions in the region continue to increase, it appears President Biden and Prime Minister Netanyahu are allowing their differences to subside. Recent excerpts from journalist Bob Woodward's latest book revealed President Biden's frustration with the Prime Minister, but clearly that's on the back burner as the two leaders are now showing a united front as the specter of war with Iran becomes closer to reality. And in the race for the White House, early in-person voting began in the swing state of Arizona on Wednesday, making it the first of the 7 battleground states where residents can now cast their ballot at the polling booths before November 5th. The voting also overlapped with the campaign events of both vice presidential nominees, Democrat Tim Walz and Republican J.D. Vance.
So you coming here and veterans, you carry another burden when you come back. There are few institutions that people respect more in our country right now than it's a veteran. And so when you speak the truth, when you speak about what you know, when you speak about unity, when you have role models that are able to do that, that really matters. So I have to tell you, on behalf of Vice President Harris, thanks for taking time out of your day. Thanks for caring enough about the country.
In 2020, President Joe Biden won the state of Arizona by a mere 10,000 votes. However, experts say the real road to the White House runs through the state of Pennsylvania. According to top election analysts, the candidate who wins Pennsylvania has more than a 90% chance of winning the Oval Office. And there are 3 main reasons for that. First, Pennsylvania has 19 electoral votes, making it the biggest prize among the battleground states. Second, it's extremely difficult for either nominee to reach the magic number of 270 electoral college votes without Pennsylvania. And third, the state has remained virtually tied for several months this election cycle. Apart from these, Pennsylvania has a mix of demographics that make it the ultimate game changer. The state has a large population of Black and Latino voters that the Harris campaign is aggressively courting. Meanwhile, the highly educated, mostly white suburban votes bleed support for Donald Trump, which is why both Donald Trump and Kamala Harris have spent sizable shares of their campaign budgets in Pennsylvania. The key state is also where the former president has held most of his rallies, while the vice president announced her economic agenda and her running mate there.
We're going to have the 4 greatest years we've ever had. I'm putting everything on the line to fight for you. I didn't have to be here. I could be in a beautiful beach. I could be in a gorgeous beach somewhere in the world. The sun beaming down on this beautiful body in a bathing suit. The sun would be beaming down. The waves would be crashing into my face. Instead, I'm here with you in Pennsylvania, and I'd rather be doing that.
And we will invest in the industries that, for example, made Pittsburgh the Steel City by offering tax credits for expanding good union jobs in steel and iron and manufacturing communities.
Now, data shows that registered Democrats outnumber Republicans in Pennsylvania, but the margin is the smallest since 1998. Moreover, when Donald Trump won the state in 2016, there were around 900,000 more Democrats than Republicans. For a presidential race marked by uncertainty, the one thing that can be counted on is both candidates will be fighting for Pennsylvania right up until Election Day. And staying in the United States, former President Donald Trump heaped praise on Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi in a recent interview. Calling him a friend, Donald Trump said Prime Minister Modi is the nicest human being and a total killer. The ex-president also talked about the Indian leader's visit to the United States in 2019 and even tried to mimic Prime Minister Modi's aggression, making the podcasters laugh. Here's more on the interview.
Not just U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris, but her opponent Donald Trump also appears to be on an interview spree. That too in a non-conventional manner. The former president recently sat down for over an hour-long podcast called Flagrant. to leverage popular entertainment media to reach young masses who might not follow the traditional news sources. During the interview with comedians Andrew Schultz and Akash Singh, Trump talked about his family life, surviving 2 assassination bids, his stance on immigration and foreign policy, and what he wants his legacy to be. However, what stood out the most was his relationship with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. According to Donald Trump, Prime Minister Modi is the nicest human being and a total killer.
Modi, he's a friend of mine and also the nicest human being. Before him being appointed as the Prime Minister, India was very unstable. On the outside, he looks like he's your father. He is the nicest and a total killer.
The ex-president also recalled the iconic Howdy Modi event that was held in 2019 in Texas, where the Indian Prime Minister addressed a large gathering of Indian Americans.
They did a thing called Howdy Modi in Houston, Texas. It was me and him, and it was beautiful. It was a gathering of around 80,000 people, and it felt like crazy. We were walking about. Today, maybe I won't be able to do something like that.
And at one point during the podcast, Donald Trump also tried to mimic Prime Minister Modi's aggression.
On a couple of occasions, somebody was threatening India, and I told Modi, "Let me help as I am very good at it." To which Modi aggressively responded, "I will handle it and would do anything necessary. We have defeated them for hundreds of years." And I said, "Whoa, what just happened there?"
It is worth noting that throughout his presidency, Trump maintained close ties with India and Prime Minister Modi. Following Prime Minister Modi's visit to the United States, the former president traveled to India in 2020 for the first time, where he was welcomed by a crowd of around 100,000 people.
The aim is to strengthen and deepen.
Apart from Prime Minister Modi, another key moment from the podcast was quite an embarrassing one for Donald Trump. The 78-year-old called himself a truthful person while expressing his frustration over the investigation into the Capitol Hill riots and Democratic attacks against him. However, instead of acknowledging Trump's apparent innocence, the podcast host began laughing in his face.
Our movement to make
Donald Trump also touched upon the hot-button topic of reproductive rights and said he believes in making some exceptions for abortion. These include threat to life of a mother, incest, sexual assault, or if the father is a murderer. With the election day just 25 days away, early voting already started. Both Donald Trump and Kamala Harris are relying on media blitz to sway undecided voters and clinch the historic nip and tuck presidential race.
Florida is facing catastrophic conditions after Hurricane Milton made landfall near Siesta Key yesterday. The storm brought deadly gale winds, widespread flooding, and left over 1 million homes and businesses without power. At least 19 tornadoes have been reported with multiple fatalities and extensive property damage. Governor Ron DeSantis has also deployed thousands of National Guard troops for rescue operations as the storm moves across the state. Our next report has more.
Florida is facing its second devastating storm in 2 weeks as Hurricane Milton made landfall on Wednesday evening near Siesta Key. The Category 3 hurricane, which sustained winds of 120 miles per hour, unleashed its fury on the Sunshine State, spawning deadly tornadoes, causing catastrophic flooding, and leaving over 1 million residents without power. The storm, which came ashore just after 8:30 p.m. local time, began its eastward march across Florida, turning roads into rivers and uprooting homes.
Yeah, it was windy. Probably for a good 15 minutes beforehand. And then it just got really bad. It kept getting cold, tornado warning. And then like this happened like instantaneously. Like these windows blew out. I was about probably right here when it happened. My cat over there on the desk. I grabbed the 2 dogs and like run under my bed. But that was it. Probably 1 minute total. Probably less.
My biggest fear is that my beautiful town is destroyed, where I've enjoyed living for the past 15 years. I'm also fearful that we will be without power for a good deal of time. That makes things a lot tougher, especially when it's hot and humid out, and the air conditioning is not working, and it's hard to keep food fresh and that sort of thing. So it may be a long recovery process. That's my biggest fear, that it's going to be a long cleanup.
In St. Petersburg, the storm dumped more than 16 inches of rain, leading to a flash flood emergency. And as of late Wednesday night, Milton downgraded to a Category 2 hurricane, with winds howling at 105 miles per hour as it neared Orlando. But forecasters warned that the danger was far from over, with a potentially devastating storm surge along Florida's Atlantic coast.
I was just trying to see if all the water is out of the bay. Usually when we get storms like this, all the water retreats out of the bay and you can just about walk across. And I just want to see what kind of conditions we were looking at today. Yeah, I'll get home. I live about less than a mile away, so, we'll be all right, man. I think we'll be okay. No problem.
Governor Ron DeSantis, who had earlier ordered over 2 million residents to evacuate, said thousands of National Guardsmen were on standby for rescue operations.
We're going to see a significant amount of rainfall on the northern part of the storm. There's already been 116 tornado warnings with 19 confirmed touchdowns throughout the state, 9 flash flood warnings, and 4 additional flood watches, with many, many more to come. We have about 9,000 National Guard personnel between Florida and other states. We also have Florida Highway Patrol, Fish and Wildlife, Department of Law Enforcement, and of course our Florida State Guard.
However, amid the storm's chaos, the political atmosphere remained tense. At a rally in Pennsylvania, former President Donald Trump extended his prayers to those in Milton's path.
Before we begin, I want to send our prayers to the people of Florida getting hit just about now. In a little while, you're going to see a hurricane like we haven't seen in a long time.
However, he didn't miss an opportunity to criticize President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris's handling of Hurricane Helene, which hit the state just 2 weeks ago.
She wouldn't have done anything different than this guy that should have really never been president, in my opinion, should have never been president. So she said that there would be nothing, and to me that is a disqualifying answer. That should disqualify her from even running. If that's going to be the case, she should be disqualified from even running. She's an incompetent person. She's grossly incompetent. She cannot be trusted, and she is totally ill-equipped to do the job of being President of the United States. I also want to send our love to everyone in Florida. They're going through a big one tonight. It's going to arrive tonight sometime around midnight, a little before midnight, and we're praying for them and asking God to keep them all safe.
While millions of residents have evacuated or sheltered in place, Tampa Zoo has been working to protect its animals. The zoo's elephants, flamingos and hippos are among the creatures hunkered down as the storm rages on.
But we do have temporary home built for them, and they've moved up to the second floor, well above any type of tidal surge that might affect the building. And then we have several animals around the building that are on the ground floor that have all moved to second floor locations.
Hurricane Milton is expected to continue its destructive path through Florida overnight before weakening over the Atlantic. But the damage it leaves behind will take weeks, if not months, to assess.
And finally, in East Asia, Taiwan's President Lai Ching-te has issued a firm warning to China. In his speech on National Day, the Taiwanese president stated that the island nation's sovereignty is non-negotiable and is not subordinate to China. President Lai even reaffirmed Taiwan's commitment to defend its independence while calling for peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait. And despite repeated offers for dialogue, Lai said China continues to harass the island both militarily and psychologically.
The Republic of China has already put down roots in Taiwan, Penghu, Kinmen, and Matsu, and it is not subordinate to the People's Republic of China. On this land, democracy and freedom are growing and thriving. The People's Republic of China has no right to represent Taiwan. The 23 million people of Taiwan, now more than ever, must reach out our branches to embrace the future. Taiwan is committed to uphold peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait and achieving global security and prosperity. We are willing to work with China on addressing climate change, combating infectious disease, and maintaining regional security to pursue peace and mutual prosperity for the people on the two sides of Taiwan Strait.
The president's statement comes amidst rising tensions with Chinese warplanes regularly operating near Taiwan. In a related development, Taiwan's Coast Guard seized a Chinese fishing boat and its 9 crew members after the vessel was found in restricted waters near a Taiwanese island. Taiwan's Coast Guard pursued the Chinese boat with water cannons before boarding the vessel.
At 10:45 a.m. on October 8th, the Coast Guard patrol ship found a Chinese fishing boat 17.5 nautical miles south of Chime Island. When the Coast Guard ship approached for inspection, the Chinese boat sped away to evade the inspection. The Coast Guard personnel immediately pursued and stopped the boat. However, the Chinese boat's pump was damaged and leaking, so the Coast Guard assisted it with pumps and sealed the water leakage. As it was towed towards Taiwan's Chime port, rough seas caused the towing line to break repeatedly. At 8:20 on October 9th, the Coast Guard slowly brought the boat back to Chime port and repaired it before transporting it to Magong port.
Beijing, which views Taiwan as part of its territory, has reacted strongly to President Lai's leadership, branding him a separatist. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson said that the Taiwanese leader is hell-bent on independence for his political self-interest.
Taiwan president's speech deliberately severed the historical connection between the two sides of the strait, reiterated non-jurisdiction, insisted on sovereignty, and changed its pattern to sell the fallacy of Taiwan's independence. It again exposed his stubborn stand of Taiwan's independence and sinister intention of increasing tensions in the Taiwan Strait to seek political gain. The government of the People's Republic of China is the sole legitimate government representing the whole of China. The One China principle is the basic norm of international relations and the general consensus of the international community. Taiwan has never been a country, nor can it become one. There is no such thing as Taiwanese sovereignty.
Now China continues to increase military pressure around the island and sent 20 aircraft and warships to patrol the waters ahead of the president's speech. Taiwan, on the other hand, remains on high alert as Chinese drills, including joint exercises with Russia, have become more frequent in the region. That does it for us today. Thanks so much for taking time out of your day to spend with us. We hope to see you right back here again tomorrow. Thanks again for watching. From impeachments to inaugurations, if it's a political story, we are on the scene. The race for the White House is heating up.
Kamala, you're fired.
I say, bring it on.
If it's breaking news, we're live with the latest coverage. From the White House, the State Department, and Capitol Hill, we know the issues, but above all, we know the players to bring you the latest in-depth analysis on all the key stories that we're covering. I'm Eric Ham. Join me from Washington here on Firstpost America.
Firstpost decodes the U.S. election, explains how America chooses its president. your primer on the race to the White House. Everything you need to know about